You walk into a minimalist cafe in Gangnam. Every table around you has a Chanel or Dior handbag placed casually on top, sitting right next to an iced Americano like it belongs there. You glance down at your plain canvas tote bag. You quietly slide it under your chair, placing it where nobody else can see it. That quick subconscious movement of your hands isn't just about fashion. It is an instinct born from a deeply engineered social system. That single moment has a name. Economists call it positional consumption. Psychologists call it identity signaling. In South Korea, it is the invisible tax on living inside a hyper-visible society. Why does sitting down for coffee feel like an unwritten exam on your net worth? Why does failing to display a luxury logo feel less like a personal choice and more like a social mistake? In 2022, a widely cited report by global investment bank Morgan Stanley revealed that South Korea had become the world's highest per capita spender on personal luxury goods, reaching approximately $325 per person annually, easily surpassing both the United States and Japan. In Korea, luxury goods are known as myeongpum, a portmanteau of myeong, meaning name or reputation, and pum, meaning product. Literally translated, a luxury item is a reputation product. But official sales figures only tell half the story. The real cost isn't written on a price tag in a department store in Myeongdong. The real cost is extracted directly from your daily peace of mind. To understand why this happens, you have to look at how your brain processes visibility under extreme social density. In 1899, the American sociologist Thorstein Veblen introduced the concept of conspicuous consumption in his seminal book, The Theory of the Leisure Class. Veblen observed that individuals frequently buy expensive, non-essential goods not for their practical utility, but to broadcast their wealth and status to relative strangers. In a small traditional village, everyone already knows who you are, what your family owns, and what you earn. But in a modern metropolis like Seoul, where millions of people pass each other in crowded subways, high-rise elevators, and office towers every day, visual shorthand replaces personal history. Your designer coat, your watch, your smartphone case, and your shoes become instant proxy signals for your competence, your background, and your social legitimacy. In South Korea, this dynamic is dramatically amplified by an ancient cultural framework known as Chaemyeon. Chaemyeon translates roughly to social face or saving face, but it represents something far deeper than simple pride or vanity. It is the perceived social obligation to maintain a respectable outer appearance that aligns with what society expects from your exact age, your educational background, and your job title. When Chaemyeon meets modern consumer capitalism, luxury goods cease to be optional indulgences. They become required uniform pieces for daily life. This behavior is known in Korean economic discourse as Gwasi Sobi, which translates directly to status-driven spending or conspicuous consumption. Consider research conducted by the Korea Development Institute. Researchers found that young adults who reported higher frequencies of social comparison on digital platforms were significantly more likely to prioritize status spending over long-term financial savings. When you feel constantly observed by your peers, spending money becomes a defense mechanism. Are you buying a $2,000 leather shoulder bag because you genuinely admire the craftsmanship? Or are you buying psychological armor to shield yourself from subtle social judgment? Let us walk through a week in the life of a 27-year-old office worker in Seoul. You wake up at 7 in the morning in a small rental apartment. Your living space is modest, barely 20 square meters. You spend 40 minutes on a packed subway car where almost every passenger around you is holding a high-end smartphone or wearing a designer coat. You arrive at your corporate office where everyday lunch conversations frequently drift toward weekend trips, expensive dining spots, and recent designer purchases. On Tuesday afternoon, a coworker brings a brand new Celine handbag to the office. Everyone in the department gathers around her desk to compliment the leather, the color, and the gold hardware. You join the circle, smiling and nodding, while quietly calculating in your head how many months of your entry-level salary that single accessory represents. On Thursday evening, you attend a dinner gathering with your former university friends at a popular restaurant in Hongdae. As food is served, conversation shifts to investment accounts, real estate deposits, and prospective matchmaking dates. You notice that two of your friends have placed their car keys, bearing the distinct logos of imported European automobiles, directly on the dining table next to their drinks. You feel a familiar, subtle tightness in your chest. Is it envy? Is it insecurity? Psychologists refer to this emotional state as social comparison anxiety. It is the continuous, exhausting friction of measuring your messy internal reality against everyone else's polished exterior. On Friday night, sitting alone in your studio apartment, you open a shopping application on your phone. You browse designer shoulder bags. You know your bank account balance is low. You know your monthly rent payment is due in less than 10 days. Yet as you scroll through the images, your brain manufactures a powerful, convincing justification. If I buy this bag, I will finally feel equal to everyone else next week. You tap the checkout button. You choose a flexible multi-month installment plan. For 15 brief minutes, a wave of relief washes through your body. You have purchased temporary social safety, but by Saturday morning, that fleeting sense of relief has completely dissolved, replaced by a cold wave of financial dread. Here is the counterintuitive twist that behavioral economists are beginning to document. In classic economic models, taking on debt is viewed as a rational trade-off. You borrow money today to enjoy a higher standard of living now, accepting the future burden of interest payments. But in modern South Korea, status-driven debt operates in a completely inverted manner. Saving money can actually feel more socially dangerous than going into debt. Why does this happen? Because in a hyper-dense, status-conscious environment, the social consequences of looking financially unsuccessful are immediate, visible, and constant. The financial consequences of debt, on the other hand, are invisible, private, and deferred far into the future. Nobody on the subway can see your negative bank balance or your monthly credit card bill, but everyone in the cafe can see whether you are carrying a designer bag or a plain canvas tote. In his influential writings on modern work and psychology, philosopher Byung-Chul Han describes how individuals in a performance-driven society become both the exploiter and the exploited within their own lives. You work longer, harder hours to afford status symbols, but those status symbols only raise the baseline expectation for your next social interaction. According to data published by Statistics Korea and the Korea Credit Bureau, youth debt among South Koreans in their 20s and 30s has expanded rapidly over the past decade. A substantial portion of this debt is driven not just by rising housing prices, but by consumer credit, leveraged retail trading, and status consumption. This trend has given rise to the phenomenon of bittoo, a Korean portmanteau of bit, meaning debt, and tuja, meaning investment. While bittoo originally described borrowing money to invest in stocks or cryptocurrency, it reflects a broader cultural mindset. The belief that taking on severe financial risk is the only rational way to escape social stagnation. This dynamic creates a profound psychological trap. If you save 80% of your salary and live frugally, you build genuine long-term financial security, but you pay an immediate daily social tax in environments where status is continuously evaluated. If you spend beyond your limits on luxury goods and status markers, you gain instant social validation and acceptance, but you systematically destroy your actual financial future. You are forced to choose between visible status and invisible stability. Which form of stress is your brain more willing to endure? This is not merely a story about South Korea. South Korea is simply the world's most acute case study for a psychological mechanism that is now spreading globally. Wherever high-speed social media networks intersect with dense urban environments, human behavior reacts in remarkably predictable ways. When you scroll through Instagram, TikTok, or Kakao Talk, your primitive brain does not comprehend that you are looking at an edited, curated highlight reel. Your evolutionary architecture assumes that everyone in your immediate social circle is suddenly accumulating more resources, achieving higher status, and outperforming you. In human evolutionary history, falling behind the rest of your tribe meant potential exile, which directly threatened your physical survival. That sudden visceral pang of anxiety you feel when seeing someone else's expensive lifestyle is not superficial vanity. It is an ancient survival instinct misfiring inside a hyper-connected digital world. Behavioral economist Dan Ariely has demonstrated that human economic decision-making is deeply irrational when exposed to social observation. We do not judge our well-being by absolute standards of comfort or wealth. We judge our well-being almost entirely in relation to the people standing directly beside us. When everyone around you elevates their consumption baseline, simply staying in place feels like an intolerable loss. You end up trapped on a financial hedonic treadmill, sprinting as fast as you can just to maintain your current social standing. So, what happens when you decide to step off the treadmill? What happens when you decide that the hidden mental cost of looking rich is simply too high to pay? The truth is that the luxury handbag sitting on the cafe table in Gangnam possesses no intrinsic magic. It holds power only because every person in that room has implicitly agreed to participate in the same unwritten ranking system. The moment you recognize that system for what it truly is, a collective, anxiety-driven social performance, the illusion begins to fade. Real financial power is not what you wear on your arm to shield yourself from the gaze of strangers. Real financial power is the quiet, unshakable freedom of not needing anyone in the room to validate your worth. The next time you walk into a crowded cafe and sit down at a table, pay close attention to what happens inside your mind. Watch the people around you arranging their high-end belongings like armor against judgment. Glance down at your plain canvas tote bag. And this time, instead of sliding it under your chair where nobody can see it, leave it right there on top of the table.